Welcome everybody tuning in. Welcome back to Big Law University. Today's topic that we're going to be talking is civil procedure. And today we're going to be tackling the subject personal jurisdiction. And let me be very clear right out of the gate, a court cannot hear whatever case it wants, just in case you were wondering. So how does this work? So before a court can touch any lawsuit, it needs power. And the power comes in three separate buckets. So you got personal jurisdiction, which is the power over the defendant. You have subject matter jurisdiction, which is power over the type of cases. And then you have venue, which is the geographically proper location. So today we're going to be focusing on the first topic, which is personal jurisdiction, because without it, the case is dead upon arrival. So here's something you need to memorize, but you obviously need to memorize everything. So if the court lacks personal jurisdiction, the defendant can shut the whole thing down with a rule. That specific rule is Rule 12b-2, which is the motion to dismiss. So again, if the court lacks personal jurisdiction, the defendant can shut it down with what rule? Somebody in the crowd out there, somebody tell me? Yes, you, beautiful lady in the back. What rule was it? Do we remember?
No, please remind me.
That rule is Rule 12b-2, the motion to dismiss. It's okay, beautiful woman back there. I'll show you after class for some extra credit, if you catch my drift. Anyways, no jurisdiction, no case. So what is personal jurisdiction, you might be asking yourself? So, personal jurisdiction is the court's power over the person or property. And there are three types, which, ignore my cat. He's learning and taking notes. He probably has a question. And there are three types which you absolutely must memorize. So you have in personam, you have in rem, and you have quasi in rem. So let me break these down in plain old English. So in personam jurisdiction is the big one. This is jurisdiction over the defendant herself based on her relationship with the forum state. So think, where does the defendant live? Where do they work? Where do they do business? Do they travel regularly? Purposefully interacting with people in the state. So if the court has in personam jurisdiction, it can enter a judgment that follows the defendant everywhere. Now, in rem and quasi in rem, let's talk about those. These are jurisdictions based on property, not the person themselves. Anyway, those are my cats running around. They got the zoomies. Ignore them. Now, in rem jurisdiction is about the property itself, like a lawsuit determining who owns land in the state. So let me repeat that again. In rem jurisdiction is about the property itself, like a lawsuit determining who owns land in the state. Now, quasi in rem uses the defendant's property in the state as a hook to resolve a dispute involving the defendant. But here's the key takeaway. Modern civil procedure overwhelmingly focuses on in personam jurisdiction. That's where your exams live. So, there's limits on personal jurisdiction. And this is critical because personal jurisdiction is not unlimited. It has two independent constraints. The first one is the statutory limits, and the second is constitutional limitations. So you must analyze both, always, every time. You got that, beautiful lady back there?
Yeah.
What are the two again? What are the two independent constraints? Do you remember?
Remind me.
Statutory limitations and constitutional limitations. So again, we'll meet after class for that extra credit. Now again, this is a two-step dance. So the constitutional limitations has to do with the due process. So the constitutional limit comes from the due process clause of the 14th Amendment. So if you're paying attention in that history class, you should be familiar with the 14th Amendment. The Constitution says states cannot deprive a person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So the question becomes, when is it fair to force a defendant to defend a lawsuit in a state? And that brings us to the most important case in personal jurisdiction. Now, one of those cases is called International Shoe versus Washington, a 1945 case that you need to burn into your big, beautiful brain. The Supreme Court said a court may exercise personal jurisdiction only if the defendant has minimum contacts with the forum state, such as that exercising jurisdiction is fair. And that's it. That is the constitutional test. That constitutional test, again, a court may exercise personal jurisdiction only if the defendant has what? Minimum contacts with the forum state, such that exercising jurisdiction is fair. Now, minimum contacts plus fairness. In plain English, what are minimum contacts, you might be asking? Minimum contacts means that the defendant has purposefully connected herself to the forum state, not randomly, not by accident, not through someone else's actions, but the defendant has purposefully connected themselves to the forum state. The defendant must choose to engage with the state. If the defendant lacks those minimum contacts, the court cannot exercise personal jurisdiction, no matter how sympathetic the plaintiff is. The second test that I spoke about is the statutory limits, the long arm statutes. So even if the Constitution allows jurisdiction, we're not done yet. There must also be a statute authorizing it. Most states use something called a long arm statute, which tells courts when they are allowed to reach out and grab an out-of-state defendant. So remember this: no statute, no jurisdiction. No minimum contacts, no jurisdiction. You need both. It's a two-step analysis. This is where the gold is for the exams. So here's the exact framework you should run on every personal jurisdiction question. Step 1. Is there statutory basis for personal jurisdiction in the forum state? Step 2. Would exercising jurisdiction be constitutional under the due process clause? Meaning, does the defendant have minimum contacts with the forum state? If the answer to either step is no, then the court cannot hear the case. Full stop. So that's personal jurisdiction at a high level. Power over the defendant, limited by statute, limited by the Constitution, defined by minimum contacts and fairness. If you understand this structure, everything else in general jurisdiction, specific jurisdiction, purposeful availment fits neatly into place. Next, we build. Thank you for joining class, and we'll see you in the next video.